I think that's true whether it's the VC funded or organically funded. Like you said, oftentimes we're too eager to pound our chest and say, look at me, I raised a bunch of money, I have an office, I hired a bunch of people, I've spent all this money, I'm successful. But unfortunately, it's like the emperor with no clothes.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another Fearless Founders podcast. My great buddy, actually both of them, Ike and now Jeremy Glauser, is our client, guest, friend. We've been together for quite a few years, and you will want to hear about his stories, many stories about having started not just one, but 3 companies and many more businesses, and we are dying to hear from him. Hey, this is wonderful to have you. Tell us about all of these other businesses. Tell us the story of how you even got here now to be somewhat retired in Oregon. Tell us the story.
It's such a pleasure to be here. And what you're doing is so important for founders because it can feel lonely, it can feel isolating, and it's hard to find people who you can relate to. And having an outlet like this is, I wish I had it. And I found it in various ways, but this is such a curated delivery of information. I've always been an entrepreneur, and I remember when I was just 9 years old, my brothers pulling me up the hill with our lawnmower, our edger, our broom, and we went around knocking doors, getting clients, mowing lawns, edging, sweeping. And I realized that I loved it at an early age. And when I was 14, I was looking for work, and there was this entrepreneur in the community. He took me under his wing. He renovated houses, and he had a manufacturing business, and he had a storage business. And I was fascinated by how he could do all these really cool things. My dad was an attorney. I thought people went to an office and sat in a desk, but no, that's not the case with everybody. And it appealed to my personality, my diverse interests, my insatiable appetite to get stuff done and do cool things. And I remember going to the gas station with him. He'd open up his wallet and he'd pull out $100 bill. I thought, how does he have so many $100 bills in his wallet? And it intrigued me. The way that he lived was so foreign to me. I grew up in a solid middle-class family. We had just enough for our 6-boy family with a father as an attorney, but the idea of taking risks and being an entrepreneur intrigued me. And so as soon as I could, I definitely ventured into that world.
Cool. Ike is already going in.
Yeah. So actually, I'm not going to go into the business directly. We are, Jeremy, we are multifaceted beings. Can you tell us a little bit about your other interests, the hobbies and all that? I know you might have more than average. So tell us about those, because I think it's gonna make more sense for the audience to hear how you have those and then balance, and we can bring it all back together.
Yeah, it's a little scary when I start to go down this route, Ike, because that entrepreneurial ADHD is real with me. I have a lot of interests. I've always been an athlete. I've loved music. I loved church. I love reading. So in any given day, I'm going to the gym, I'm meditating, and I'm mindful. I'm studying my scriptures. I'm reading a chapter or 2 in a book. I am also spending time working on business ventures, which we may talk about today. I have a few in the hopper right now. But I also am learning the piano. I always wanted to learn the piano, so I practice for 30 minutes every day, have lessons every Friday. I probably spend no less than 20 hours a week doing service in my church. I've got 5 kids, 2 dogs, so spending time with the dogs. We live on 5 acres. So we have a garden, we have an orchard. Upkeeping all of those different things if I don't have, I drive my wife absolutely nuts, and finding uh, finding that balance between her personality and my personality is a lifelong pursuit. Because having all of these things constantly going can definitely drive her nuts, but it's what fulfills me. Is that what you're asking? Did I go
Yes,
overboard?
exactly. No, exactly. I wanted audience to, I think, um, know about you more, because I think your stories will make a bigger impact. But two things. One is, I know a few founders that are like trying to do many things, and some of them are single focused. It's all okay. It's all great as long as you know yourself, and you find the strength on how you are, is the thing. So like, that's what I just wanted the audience to get to know you a little bit. And
I are you single focused or ADHD like Jeremy and I? What are your thoughts?
I I'm gonna draw a parallel. I am an introvert, but I am a trained extrovert, so I try to be extrovert. Yeah, so it's the same. I am many things. I am like ADHD level, the business level, on the things that I learn every day. So like, I crave for learning, but I try to make myself single focused as much as I can. Just like I try to be extrovert. I try. So with nature versus intention is our opposites.
I think that's a beautiful thing. And knowing yourself is such a critical piece. Having all these interests doesn't mean that you don't have to have structure. I have to have a lot of structure. I go to bed between 9:30 and 10, and at the end of the night, I do my journaling. It's a routine. It helps me conclude the day, sleep better. And then in the morning, I'm up at 5:30. I like the quiet hours. I like to get in those things that really feed my energy and give me fulfillment, with my exercise, mindfulness, study, things like that before the day just gets crazy with kids and getting them to school and then work and responding and meeting and all those other things that happen.
Right on. And with that, Jeremy, tell us about the businesses that you've been involved with. 3 startups and then more. And tell us about just a quick catch up as we go into the learnings that we can share.
Absolutely. Some of you might find these very unsexy, and that's okay. But to me, they're impactful. And I would be remiss if I didn't just share quickly that when I was in high school, my mom passed away suddenly, and my entrepreneurial focus changed significantly at that time. I realized that I wanted to do things that would provide more of a social impact. So I got into my first venture, which is called Lunchboxers. And we essentially had an online ordering system and kitchens across Utah. The parents of kids could order a breakfast or a lunch or an afternoon snack. Our kitchens would package them up and deliver them. I mean, we allowed people to order all the way up until 8 a.m., which in hindsight blows my mind because it puts so much strain on the operations to get food out to the different school sites. And the technology of ordering and packaging up those orders so that we could fulfill them from the kitchen was a really cool experience. Kids who don't eat can't think. They're focused on survival. I need food. It's hard for them to calm the chaos of their need. And that was a very fulfilling venture. And from there, all of my ventures have been focused on helping the underserved. So my life mission took shape in that, which is help people fulfill their potential. And I've done that in K-12. So moved on to a venture with a speech scientist called Complete Speech, where we took this amazing technology. It looks kind of like an Invisalign, that clear tray that sits on your teeth and straightens your teeth. Well, it wasn't Invisalign. It looked like that, but it had electrodes attached to the acrylic material that we used. And so as a person would speak, their tongue would touch their palate and it would fire up a visual on the computer screen. So now you can see what your tongue to palate contact looks like. And when someone's learning a new language or someone is trying to fix their speech impediment, they're not able to hear the issue. So bringing in a visual cue helped remediate a lot faster. That was really neat. And that focus on linguistics introduced me to the idea of speech therapy in schools. I'd studied linguistics at BYU. I was very interested in that. And that's what led to my most recent venture with an incredible team at Illuma. And that's been the last 15 years. And I've recently stepped aside to a great CEO. He started at Illuma just about a year ago. And I'm board chair and moving on to new ventures, new perspective.
Isn't that fun, Ike, to hear what he's done? And that he had a mission for the underserved.
Jeremy, did you have to work it out, whether it's on your journalism or in your head, what your life mission is? What your goal is? What was that process?
Honestly, it was always just a feeling I couldn't articulate, Ike. I couldn't put it into words until my early 30s. So although I was operating on this idea of helping people fulfill their potential, focusing on the underserved, I knew it was the underserved, but I couldn't articulate those words until my early 30s. So it's okay. I look back and I feel like, oh, it's okay that I couldn't put it to words. And admittedly, until I could put it to words, I did feel a little bit rudderless. Like, I know I want to do this, but being able to capture that in words did feel like I was not quite sure what I was focused on.
So tell us a little bit about the early days of our audience, as first-time founders. You were a few times with founding team. So tell us about the journey, maybe a few stories that you have. So we're looking for lessons that you learned, so that we can pass it along. And I think maybe we can tie that into controlling emotions while you're driving really hard to make something happen, like a business.
Yeah, those emotion parts, I think for me, are manifest in kind of an obsessive nature where my emotions get wrapped up into the venture, and it's hard to differentiate between like my personal identity and the business identity. And through my own executive coaching, I've learned to be better at looking at the business and myself more accurately and not entangling them emotionally. But the first venture called Lunchboxers, that one was a really fun one because I learned a lot of what not to do. And sometimes ventures are meant to do that. I mean, by all measuring sticks, that was a good success. I didn't have equity as one of the founding members. That was a learning lesson. And looking back, there was an opportunity to be part of that. I also recognized that it was part of a portfolio of companies that siphoned earnings from that venture and made it difficult to reinvest into the venture. So that was a big lesson. I think it's important to be careful with the resources that you're making. And the portfolio was essentially subsisting on the earnings and the profits that we were making at Lunchboxers. Ultimately, we ended up selling it to another local company, Jason's Deli, and they took it over from there. And it doesn't exist anymore. Lunchboxers doesn't, as it was intended originally. That was. I think there were lots of failures and lots of successes, but all in all, it wasn't life-changing for anybody on the founding team. I hope it was impactful for the kids that we served through that point. You know,
I have to ask you on this particular one, what's
Yeah.
the one big aha to share on this Lunchboxers experience, Jeremy?
You got to make money in order to do good. We were charging like $2.50 for a lunch. I mean, come on, we couldn't make anything. It was also kind of funny because it's funny, but it's really sad at the same time. In order to try and meet food costs and bring our cost of goods into a reasonable percentage of those, those unit sales, we sourced local farmers and local producers and got really delicious apples and really great curated goods. And the kids would take them and throw them right in the trash because it wasn't pizza. It wasn't fruit by the foot. It wasn't the stuff that was sugary and yummy. And so, you got to know your market, and even if you have a desire to do a good thing, it has to be priced right. It's got to be delivered and packaged right. There's got to be a demand for it. I think those are probably the standouts for me.
I just had a breakfast meeting this morning with another business owner who said exactly, I'm going to turn this business into a high profit machine because the profits are so low. The original intention to do good is being limited. I cannot do the good when I have so little profits. So I'm going to look a little selfish and ruthless, but ultimately it's going to do better to help more people if I'm more profitable.
Let me take a note here. Increase prices by 5-fold tomorrow for my business.
Yeah, exactly. if it were that easy, only if it were that easy.
Yeah.
He's thinking of 2xing his prices.
So
go ahead.
5x minus 3. Everybody 3 discount. Everybody loves discount. So
yeah, exactly. There you go.
Want a deal? They want a deal. That's what it is.
Yes.
Jeremy, second. What was the other one after that again?
Yeah. So the second was complete speech, and this one was, the way that I got into it is one of the people working for us at Lunchboxers left Lunchboxers before we sold and joined Complete Speech. And she said, hey, Jeremy, you'd be really interested in this. Why don't you come join us? And I had studied linguistics, and this Complete Speech was all about assistive technology to help young people with speech impairments fix those, or people learning English reduce their accent. And I thought, man, this is so cool. And the speech scientist was involved. Dr. Sam Fletcher was in his 80s. He was ripe in age. And that was a tough one because he was very hands-on and very involved. And he was at a point where he should have been retired, but was so passionate about this device that it made it hard for us as a team. There were just 3 of us on that founding team with the speech scientist. And it made it hard for us to really go out and drive independently. We had some really smart people, including Andy Myers, who was the CEO at the time, an engineer who was really paving the way for the technology. And we ended up selling it because the speech scientist, Dr. Fletcher, just couldn't keep going at his age. He needed to move on. So it was kind of like the equivalent of a short sell on a house. He ended up selling it to someone he trusted and was close to. And even still, if you go Google Complete Speech, you'll find the website. It's a great product because it truly is research-based and evidence-based and does remediate people's speech impairments and reduce accents. But it just wasn't, it was wrong timing for me and for us. I think that was the biggest thing. It was priced pretty high at that time as well for speech language pathologists who were our buyer to be able to afford the device that it was priced at. We were kind of early and we were kind of highly priced. and we didn't have enough runway to test the real, different levers like price and promotion and who are we going to sell to and how are we going to sell it to that certain group of buyers.
Timing is so critical, and it's something that we cannot influence.
Hmm.
And I see this consistently in all of the businesses I've started, in the businesses I've seen succeed that may not have been mine or a part of. Everything there's a large confluence of timing as a component of success, never mind product market fit, how hard you work, the team that you get together. Timing is a lot to do with, and that's something that with success and that you can't control. I saw one particular good friend of mine. He joined on to I think it was a B round tech company, and 2 months after he joined on, they got sold.
Wow.
And he, as a C-level marketing guy, had a mid 7-figure exit 3 months after he joined. So
Wow.
it's the timing. But then I also look at all of the businesses I've started. 2 of them didn't succeed because it was too early.
Yeah.
One was a little too late, and the incumbent companies that were the big behemoths decided they were going to do it themselves instead of a little startup. It just happens. The timing is a big portion of how people can sometimes succeed no matter what they do, or succeed because in spite of what they do. It's a timing element.
100% agree. I think that success is really hinges on the congruence of timing and skill. If you're prepared for that timing and you have the skill, you find yourself in the position to do something extraordinary.
Yeah.
And then along the way, you'll face lots of challenges. And can you persist? Can you persevere?
I came up with the self-talk that it's okay, slower is better. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'll learn more. I'll be a better person for this journey.
You know what? Isn't that the truth?
Right? Because we all face our challenges and go, how come I didn't get that easy one? Right? Everybody does the comparison game. And yet I couldn't be happy where I am now for having gone through the slugs, multiple, more than one. And I'm grateful. All of the scars and all of the lessons and the bruised, bumped heads, that was my journey.
Is it for our audience, when you realize in your business that timing is not on your side, there's some challenges. I had a recent conversation with a founder. Just found out that it is extremely hard to sell for his market. Like the cycles, the customer behavior. This is a B2B company. So as a founder, you have to try to pivot, right? Like whether it's micro pivot, bigger pivot, if you raised money, in that case, my friend raised some money. So maybe using that money, go back to your board and say, look, I'm going to pivot. I mean, maybe it's a little easier rather than starting from zero again with all the ideas and then improving everything. But what I'm trying to get to is, as founders, we have to try. Use everything in your power and in your resources to pivot if the timing is not good for you. But it's also okay. You tried everything, it didn't work out. But I think you have to have that pride so that you can actually go do the next one, right? Because some things you can control, some things you cannot. So you push all the things that you can control, but then let go the things that you can't control. That would be my advice.
I think that's sage advice, Ike. I also come from a background of organically funding a business without a financial sponsor can be very advantageous in many situations. I call it the zigzag principle. Can you zig to a cash flow producing activity on the way to your outcome versus raising capital and taking on the pressure of going all in on a single direction? And I think this idea of zigging and zagging helps us to adapt quickly. I'll give you a perfect example in my experience at Illuma. On the heels of Complete Speech, I founded Illuma with a business partner. And within 3 months, realized that that business partner with a full-time job and everything wasn't as interested in what we were doing. And as a result, we were not making progress. So what was the zig? We had to have a hard conversation. And I ended up buying him out for $12,000, which at the time was an enormous sum of money. And we parted ways. What did that do? It accelerated my ability to start experimenting and iterating. And even though the vision was build a company that was doing telehealth in schools, I didn't have money to build a technology. So the zag at that point was call as many schools as I could in Utah and staff, call therapists and say, I have a position, and then call schools and place them, right? And that was the zag so that I could cash flow. And as that cash flow started to build up, I could invest. And now I'm zigging back to technology and I'm saying, let's invest in some technology. So there is a route of VC funding, and it's appropriate for certain people and mentalities and businesses. Also on the organic funding side, those zigs and zags can feel like huge decisions, almost like betraying your original vision of where you're going. If I'm headed here, how can I possibly say I'm going to staff? And that's not what I'm doing. How will my investors think about that? But that is oftentimes the only way to pivot as we go toward our ultimate goal at the end of the day.
I love it. Yes, I think the founders needs to realize those zigzags are okay. Sometimes like we create stories in our head like, oh, Netflix didn't do DVD rentals but they did, right? So they had their own zigzag at the moment, even though the name of the company, but Netflix, the ultimate goal has always been streaming online, but they did sell DVDs.
Yeah.
And they needed to.
Hey,
there's
and so
lots of examples.
Yeah. So I'm also going to say this. I also believe that many of our listeners need to understand that raising funds is not the only definition of success. Two components. You can succeed organically. And my VC friends have said, if you can do it without our monies, do it. You have more control. You have all of that. Number two, it's also a mentality, especially in this tech space, that everything has to do with being funded at multiple rounds at higher valuations, and that's success. And I think that's also faulty. For they have pounded the chest and said, hey, what happened? We succeeded. We closed a round. Great. I'd rather you tell me that you have customers who are paying you and they want to pay more and more for your product or service versus you closed a round. And there's a little bit of a unhealthy spotlight on those who've got funding and the belief that that's the definition of success. I don't believe that. But again, the software, SaaS, it's small incremental charge. There's no front loading. It takes a lot to be able to pay for all those engineers, and hence money is needed. What are your thoughts, both of you? What are your thoughts on this topic?
Jeremy, go for it.
Well, I'm a little bit biased to funding without VC or outside capital. I think that maintaining control allows you to be much more agile. I think trying to generate a revenue stream and cash to fund development is important because you can take the time to stay close to customers. When fundraising, a lot of people call it the VC drug. And I think the reason people call it the VC drug is for the reason that once you take the money, now you spend a ton of time rolling up reports, having to manage how you spend that money. You have to make sure that you're reporting back and having all those conversations. You lose some control, and it can feel like you have to prepare for the next round in order for that VC to get their exit. That's a big distraction. And if customers are really the driver of the business and meeting their needs, with a large distraction, you can miss a lot of important details. Also, when you are pulled away from the customer as the founder too early, you lose a pulse on the market need, the market problem that got you there in the first place. So we have to use a lot of discipline to stay really close to the customer and to stay involved in building for the needs. And if that means I've got to figure out how to generate cash before I can actually build the product exactly how I want it, then so be it. And that's, I think that's true whether it's the VC funded or organically funded. Like you said, oftentimes we're too eager to pound our chest and say, look at me, I raised a bunch of money, I have an office, I hired a bunch of people, I've spent all this money, I'm successful. But unfortunately, it's like the emperor with no clothes. I don't want to be the emperor with no clothes. I want to be able to really deliver value.
Ike, what are your thoughts on this topic?
I think I don't want to oversimplify things, because when I oversimplify it, we're going to lose a lot of context. It really depends on the situation. So the founder needs to be able to gauge all these factors to make a decision for themselves. I'll start with the VCs. There are a few principles. Like if the benefit that you're going to bring to the customers and the problem you're going to solve require a lot of hardware and a lot of capital, and there's no way to do that. I know, like in Utah, I met a hardware company. They're doing some energy solutions for the homes and buildings, the commercial companies. That requires a lot of capital, and there's no way to do that. I built my first startup by working as a freelancer and make money from that. You can't fund a hardware company like that. Like, impossible, right? There's that. There's another one, Bino, I think you taught me this. If you have a business, you proved your product helps a lot of people, and you have a fiduciary responsibility to make money for the people you support, whether it's a board, employees, investors, whatever. If you find your position where if you had $1, you can turn that into $3. Every $1 you can bring $3, whatever it is, like marketing, expression sales, or geographies. That, like, you have to bring the money from the VCs. It just doesn't make sense. That is not a good business decision not to bring a VC in that way. But on the opposite side, right? If you say, oh, I have an idea, I haven't talked to any customer yet, I don't even know if this works, I'm just going to go raise some money and then build it with somebody else's money. And at the end, even if I succeed, I'm going to have 3% of the company when we exit. That doesn't make sense either, right? So you like, if you can fund your early days and build your product and prove your product with your customers' money, that's the best, because they will do it. And then you can decide where is there a good outcome here for me and the investors if I bring investors. If not, don't. Right? If there's a good outcome for both, then you can. So I think that's what I would advise. Rather than VC is good, VC is bad, bootstrapping is good, bootstrapping is bad. It depends on the situation of the product, where the founder is, where the market is. If you're attacking a brand new market versus you're going after the incumbents, right? Things depends.
Yeah. I agree so much that it depends, Ike. And at a certain point, it makes a lot of sense. I think what you're describing is smart money. And if it's, I have to raise money because that's how everyone else does it, there's not enough substance to that. But if I'm doing it because spending $1 makes 3, then I have a formula and I can still maintain, a level of control. I think that there's a very important principle that is underlying all of this. And constrained resources, whether it's time, it's money, it's people, really promotes better innovation. When our back is up against the wall and we have to do something, there's no other way out. Human minds do incredible things. And it's not always just about having money that makes it successful. It's constraining our resources to use them to promote innovation.
Yeah. In the journey that I had and the example that I brought up, Jeremy, there was a startup where I actually figured out the math formula that if I put $1 into the marketing machine, sales would be able to output 3x.
Yeah.
And it was an incredible opportunity. I knew it was a small window of time, and we had to get outside money because it was a proven formula. It was so good. It's a rare thing. Most people go and get the money to bring the idea to fruition. If we could bring money in when we've got a proven formula, then everybody wins. You reduce the dilution, you have more ownership control, more influence and power than begging because you have to meet payroll. That's a big difference. And so that's, again, there is a great use of strategic money to accelerate. And the most expensive is to prove an idea. And that's how we always.
Yeah. And I think I've taken money. I went out and brought in a PE firm. I think it's the stage that we're also talking about, right?
Yeah.
Is it early? Do I have an unproven idea? Do I need to sit with this and take more time before I raise money? If we're in a growth stage, do I have a formula that by pouring gasoline on the fire, that fire will grow instead of extinguish? I made that decision too. I brought on a financial sponsor. I'm very happy with that. It took 10 years to bring on a financial sponsor. Some might say that was a 10-year overnight success because people don't see those 10 years, right? And that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And with Illuma, particularly since it was your last successful business, what are some of the things you learned from there that you could advise our listeners and viewers on some of the I learned that again, or that's a good learning? What would you share with the audience here?
I don't know if we have enough time for all of this. Oh man, I think the thing that stands out the most as we talk about this is it's not nearly as hard as I thought it would be. It's much harder. And I mean, it's just the truth.
Yeah.
Because, keep in mind that I chose the route of doing it through a bootstrapped approach. And my reasoning for that was K-12 are not fast adopters. They're laggards in many ways. The public school system is a bureaucracy. There's lots of layer of decision making. And so doing it in a bootstrapped way not only extended the time frame, but schools in and of themselves, their purchasing process extended the time frame. And so, being patient, and you call it, how do I know if this is going to succeed or not? I was 4 years in working a full-time job at AppTask, which is now Workfront. And I was sitting with my father-in-law at their house. My wife, Natalie, was in the room. I was at my wit's end. I've spent 4 years on this thing. How do I know to keep going or not? Now, keep in mind, we're making hundreds of thousands in revenue, but not enough for me to go full-time, not enough for me to really dedicate energy to it. And he looked at me and he said, "You know the answer, and I believe in you." And you know what happened in that moment is all this like confusing energy ended in clarity, which was, "You're right, I'm not done." And within a year, I quit my job, went full-time, and then a whole nother, a whole nother era of issues and problems. So in 2000, I'm going to mess up the year, but I'll say 2016 because I think that's the year. That was the year of the revenue crisis. I had just gone full time a few months prior. We had just enough to pay ourselves a living, meager living, and we had some sales reps that had brought in. I mean, it was a massive amount of money, guys. $800,000 in new sales. And I thought, let's go hire people to support this. We're doing this. And that was in the spring of 2016. By August and September, $500,000 of that had reneged on their contracts. I can't tell you the gravity of crisis we faced in our little world. I had to lay off engineers. I had to lay off support people. It was traumatizing for me and for other people. It was the biggest crisis I had felt in my life at that time. And because, like I said earlier, I was so entangled with my business and personal identity, I felt like my life was ending. And I don't say this lightly, but I seriously considered taking my own life, thinking if I'm not here, I won't have to own up to these problems and address these. That was in about November of 2026 or 2016. In December, a light shined through and I had a ray of hope. And I mean, of all people, it was Tony Robbins, and it was a podcast, and he was talking about the belief cycle and success. And it just, guys, I know it's so simple, but it changed my mindset. And a little R&D project that we had started earlier in 2016, which we thought was nothing, became the saving grace. We were operating on a contract that was really flimsy. It was hourly. Schools could renege. There was no real commitment. But this thing that we were experimenting with in kind of a research basis was a subscription-based model. Now, in 2016, that was not very standard practice in schools for a tech-enabled service. So it felt like we were on Mars. Well, after talking with sales team members and engineers, I remember Chad, I love that guy, and George, and we were talking about, well, what do we do? And I said, guys, I need you to get on board with this. And they were like, I don't get it, but we'll try. And we burned the boats like Cortez did. And we decided this is the business model. We're forsaking the hourly, the contracted model that we had done. And in January, I'm not joking, within a month, we turned our ships, we turned our focus, and we started to sell a subscription, and we started to migrate our existing contracts to subscription. By the time June rolled around, we had increased our gross margin by double digits. We had added a significant amount of revenue, and they were on contracts that were subscription based. So there's no doubt that meant the schools couldn't renege. It was a commitment. And that was the beginning of a new phase. So when I talk about how innovation comes in crisis, I mean it, I know it. Like when you're up against the wall and you're facing failure straight in the face and you have no other options yet to innovate, it's as scary as all get out. It feels like life and death, but there's a way out.
Awesome.
That was you mentioned something very deep there. You really did have a dark moment where you considered taking your life because it got that dark. Mm-hmm. That's some serious stuff. And we're so glad that you fought through it, innovated out of it, got hope, whether it was from Tony Robbins or whatever. So grateful, right? And now you have a beautiful
I appreciate
family.
that. Yeah, because at the next, that was the darkest, but at the next darkest point in the evolution of my role as a CEO and a founder, I actually met Binoy. And as an executive coach, you helped me to regain more than that I lost. So it's kind of this, it's this, learning is not a linear path. It's this ebb and flow. We have high moments and we have valley moments. And I think as long as that trajectory stays on a positive trend, we're doing good.
Yeah. Yeah. You smooth out the ups and downs and look at it going to the right and up. That's all we're looking for, just continuous effort. Yeah. It's incredible, the journeys that we all take. And you were and continue to be the most humble, hardworking guy out there. So you just have to work your way through it. I wrote down, innovation comes from crisis. There's too many. After a while, they just become, another crisis. Oh, another crisis. But the newbies, they're like, what is going on? And we just go, right? We just go, I remember that conversation with Ike too. Of course.
Yep.
It's okay. It'll be fine. It'll pass.
But you're never dismissing it. You're never taking it lightly, because it could be life-threatening for the company, catastrophic. But you try to spend a lot less time in the fear zone. You try to snap out of it, and then okay, I'm gotta focus on fixing the problem and rallying the troops to help you fix the problem.
Yeah,
100%. If I may, a thought on that is the fear is so personal early on. I had crises up to that point in 2016, but nothing to that level. And because everything was so personal, I couldn't disentangle my emotion with the feeling of what was happening. And, as you build capacity through experience, I think what you're saying, Ike, is so important, because rather than feeling fear, we can approach the situation deliberately and see it accurately. This is a business crisis. This is not a personal crisis. I treat it with importance. I approach it accurately with good judgment, and we rally around it. And I know we'll get through it. Don't know how long it will take.
Yeah, but the thing is, like all of us here on this call, we had over and over and over these cycle crisis, right? And then now we can sit and say, okay, this is another crisis. This is a business problem, not me problem. Is it even possible for a new founder not feel the weight of the world? Like, can that be coached, or does it just they have to live through it and then learn? Can we ease it, or just we're gonna have to find out how you built? So what do we say? What is there a problem? Is there a solution to this problem?
Yeah, I think the solution is that good judgment comes through experience, and experience only comes from poor judgment. So why would we remove those experiences from a new founder? As a new founder, I would not trade any of them. What I would do, though, is exactly what you said. I would go back and I would surround myself with people who I trust, and I would engage with advisors and coaching more formally. That's what I would have done, because there is something to be said about accelerating that learning curve. I would never suggest that someone should skip it, because that's so important. But can they accelerate? 100%.
I love that. I was going to say the same to Ike's question, which is a beautiful question. No, there is no replacement to the customized learning journey that every new business owner goes through. It is a required part of the success formula. My kids always say, "Hey, Dad, how come you know all of this stuff?" I says, "Because I made more mistakes than you." So that's it, right? So there is no way to go past it. You are signing up, hands raised, to say, "Bring on the pain. I'm going to start a business." Okay, good on you. You're going to have some learning tolerances that you're going to figure out, that you are stronger than you thought, that you can take more hits than you believe you could. And in the end, you'll become that much more confident. And down the road, you'll be able to look at new challenges with a level of perspective that allows you to succeed and not be drawn into the drama of woe is me. So I feel very strongly you have to go through it.
Yeah.
But Jeremy, very wise, but get some help. You don't have to be lingering in that valley longer than necessary. Jettison yourself out with perspective and get help. But too much of it is, I got to do it on my own. I got to do it on my own. And that is unhealthy.
And that's what I did. It was very unhealthy. I would never do it that way again. I don't mind doing it. As a matter of fact, I have a high pain tolerance, which is partly why I'm an entrepreneur. But I would do it with people, with coaching, with sage advice that I can get the perspective you're talking about.
Yeah, and the for those founders, the symptoms are like you're going to feel fear of failure, fear of loss, because if you build somewhere and then the fear of loss, your health will degrade, your relationships will strain, you'll feel more isolation, right? Like all these things again, like I know I'm repeating, but it's okay to feel these because this is how you're going to learn. This is how you're going to be a better leader, better CEO, whether it's this company or the next company. But pay. You can find out what's happening by a guide, by you, right? And then recognize it better.
You know, I do you mind if I share some
Sure.
firsthand experiences with that point?
Of course.
Since I stepped aside as CEO, I've gone back and become certified as a health and wellness coach. Not only because the company Illuma is a therapeutic company, but because the health and wellness was so important to me as a founder. It feels lonely and it can feel isolating, where everything stops with you, all decisions come to you, and most of the time it's always the hardest and most complex. And I coach founders and CEOs and executives now. I have found a pattern to what you're talking about. We talked about this before. And relationship with loved ones seems to be the most common issue that founders face. It's strange. I faced it, felt like my marriage was nearly at an end at certain points. I felt like I couldn't breathe. You know, another thing is our health. Our health just seems to deteriorate because we're so obsessive, whether that's gaining weight, eating like crap, not putting good things in our body. And on top of that, we feel like we're not really getting anything done productively. Those three things, universally common across all the clients that I have been coaching over the past year. And, you know, I think it's important. I say that because I think it's important that everyone listening know that you're not alone. We all experience those same symptoms of building something. So building something and figuring out how to live well at the same time is important, because high performance, in my experience, is much more likely when we're not ignoring other aspects of our life.
Agreed.
Secret.
Yeah, I've been there, done that.
Yeah. And I'm still working on it, Ike.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm much better today than I was 5 years ago or 6 years ago, but I'm still working on it.
Yeah. There's one more thing I'll add, Binoy, which I give you credit once again. You know, Binoy has a term. Like if there's a problem and nobody's talking about it, there's a stinky fish problem. But I'm going to adapt that a little bit to the founders. When the founders are talking to customers, prospects, employees, VCs, the stinky fish comes out. So it's
I like this analogy.
you better work on yourself and
Mhm.
recognize the symptoms that we're all talking about now and acknowledge them. So we're not saying cover them, like acknowledge them, but go head on and say that this is the experience I'm going through. This experience is gonna be the one building my character, and I'm gonna come out right, come out okay out of this. I think that type of mentality can give you the power to be vulnerable at the same time, confident about the technology you're building or the problem you're solving, or just come out genuine. I think that is the way to eliminate the stinky fish from your prospects, employees, and investors.
Well said.
Yeah, what a good reminder of that terminology. For those who are listening and watching, that reference that Ike said is about how we often come up with ways to clean up our appearance, our talk, and appear okay, but we really haven't taken care of the root problem. And
Yeah.
so the stinky fish is evident, even if your packaging looks like you're all great and put together. We still got some issues we got to address.
Yes.
And so you, Jeremy, now becoming an executive wellness coach is a dot on. I am so happy for you, so proud of you that you're helping now at another level of maturity and experience, but there are many of us needing that. And I'm really, really happy and excited. And I hope those who are watching, listening, contact Jeremy. He can help you. And today has been great, Jeremy. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I appreciate that too, Binoy. And you were my executive coach first, and at the point where I stopped the regular coaching engagement, I knew that I had to go apply it. So I don't know if I get more or if the client gets more, but I sure benefit from applying this knowledge every week. And it's all ships rise with a rising tide. Is that how that goes?
Yep.
It's a good thing.
It's a great thing. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this was wonderful. Ike, it was a blast, huh? To have Jeremy
awesome. Thanks,
and
Jeremy.
his personality. Thank you. Hey, everyone. Another great episode. We're really proud and happy to have Jeremy here, our friend. And we're grateful for him for sharing. See you next week. Please share this with other people. Please let them know we want to help. That's all we're trying to do. Thanks. Until next time. Goodbye, everyone. Take care.